Hey everybody, it's Shelley from Balance Point Partners. If you caught our last episode, you met George the Caveman. Now, as you can imagine, George did well in his time. However, in our new complex workspaces, it's not working out so great. In this episode, we're going to look at what happens when George is faced with decision making. And I'm going to be honest, I don't have a lot of hope for him. But stay tuned. We'll talk with Chris and see what George does. Hey, Chris, it's great to be back again. It was very interesting meeting your friend George in our first episode.
He's a great guy.
He's a very interesting guy. I'd really like to understand how this primitive brain starts to show up when we're making decisions in our modern day workplace. So can you walk me a little bit through how George impacts decision making?
You betcha, Shelley. When George shows up, first thing is when George shows up in the office, he doesn't know why he's making decisions because he's responding to the vast majority of instructions that he can't inspect. And you know what? When you're making decisions and you don't know why, that's basically a fast brain function, and you're not doing the types of reflection and analysis that really makes the difference. You're just responding.
He's got a bit of a short attention span,
I can
see.
He does.
Now, Chris, though, someone could make the argument, I work in a fast-paced industry, I need to make quick and effective and efficient decisions. This is great to be dealing with the primitive brain because it's going to make those decisions fast, hard-hitting.
Yep. And so, Shelley, really the second problem with George in the workplace is he does exactly that, which how often have we seen a bunch of firm, confident individuals in a boardroom making those decisions and springing to action? Problem is, sure, that worked 100,000 years ago when a saber-toothed tiger is chasing you, or you got to not let the fire go out. Right now, we face very, very complex problems that require that we think much more deeply. We look at data over a much broader period of time. We've got to do analysis. It's just a lot more complicated. And if you're making decisions and responding to the world without really being deeply curious, you are giving all the power over to the organization that is prepared to think before they act.
So if I'm in the boardroom and we're all excited to make this big decision and we're going fast, how do I stop? How do I stop that primitive brain from taking over?
Well, Shelley, when we're faced with, a call to action on an important decision, the most important thing you can do is just delay it. Slow it down. So call for a break. Ask everybody to go for a walk for an hour. Ask people to bring evidence back. Ask people to sleep on it. It's old advice, but it works. The critical thing is you want to move from the instinctive, quick brain, the one that's just responding to threats and stuff, and really move it more into the reflective brain, which processes information much more deeply and more slowly. But remember that our survival mostly has been on our ability to respond and react quickly, particularly if we are physically big and aggressive.
And when I'm thinking about those types of decisions, I think about risk.
Yep.
So what does that look like in the modern world? I think it was really easy, tiger's coming at me. I'm either going to fight it or I'm going to run, right? Fight or flight. These new risks in this complex work environment aren't as easy to spot as a tiger. So how does our primitive brain work with assessing risk and decision making?
So Shelley, when George shows up in the office and he needs to deal, with a decision that has risk, the problem is he tends or she tends to really look at their experience over a period of time, which means for the most part, we only assess risk based on our map of reality, which is our map of experience. But right now we're reinventing or we're inventing things that have never existed before. So our maps of reality when it comes to risk are very, very inaccurate. And so our overall ability to assess probability is terrible. How often have we heard the phrase, never again? Okay. And yet the reality is it will be over and over until we learn to think more deeply and until we learn to view probability, statistics, risk analysis as really an absolutely essential post-caveman skill.
Interesting. As you're talking, I'm thinking about the episode we did on biases.
Yep.
And I'm having a feeling that the primitive brain doesn't delineate to pull out biases, and they're not very aware of those biases. Am I correct in assuming that?
You're absolutely right, Shelley. I mean, as we talked about, really a bias is an unconscious thinking error. So it's an error in our code, and we're generally not aware of the biases or how they play out. So anytime that George is in the office and we have to make a decision and George is in the room with us, we have to scan and go, what biases are likely at play and what are we going to do about them?
Interesting. This is a fascinating series. We have to wrap up, so quick fire, 3 takeaways from today.
You betcha. When it comes to the care and feeding of your caveman, when it comes to decisions, keep in mind these 3 things. 1, your caveman doesn't know why he or she are making decisions. You gotta deal with that. 2, we're not built to deeply think. Your caveman doesn't think deeply. You need to create the environment and the conditions so that deep thinking is a requirement for complicated problems. And 3rd, our caveman is terrible at probability and statistics. Get that really smart kid from your college or university class into the room when it comes to making important decisions and ask for evidence about actual probability. Shelley, that's it. Whew, that was a lot, eh?
That's a lot. George doesn't fare so well in decision making. Maybe next week in our episode around problem solving, he'll do a little bit better. Until next time, I'm Shelley.
I'm Chris.
And we love exploring the quirky ways our brain shows up in the boardroom.
Take good care of your caveman.
Until next time.